When I was about 8 years old, I had an encounter that scared the shit out of me. I went with my mother to pick up my little sister from school. When we arrived, I asked if I could stay in the car because I was lazy and knew she would be only gone for like 15 minutes. She agreed. I was always an anxious child, so I locked all the doors behind her and tried to make myself inconspicuous. Within minutes, a car pulled up to the spot beside mine. Already this was strange because the parking lot was nearly empty. The door opened, and I saw that it was full of men. There were no empty seats for any potential pickup. I started to get nervous and tried to hunker down. My movement must have caught their eye because they started surrounding the car and pulling on the door handles trying to get in. One man was knocking on the door, saying,
"Come on, little girl, why don't you open the door for me?"
I remember wondering if I was dreaming because it literally sounded like something someone in one of my anxiety scenarios would say. At some point, after laughing and trying the doors repeatedly, the men got back into the car and drove away. When my mum got back, I was in hysterics, and I explained what had happened. She didn't believe me, and to this day, she still doesn't. I can't say I don't understand why. A few years back, my friend and I were walking around the mall. We had to use the restroom, and the nearest one was this creepy, isolated one towards the back of the mall. My friend would always tell me that bathroom gave her bad vibes, but I thought she was just being paranoid. Anyways, we headed towards the bathroom, and as we were walking, a man walked past us, giving us the creepiest stare. I turned around and noticed he was following us. I quickened my pace and urged my friend to do the same. She was confused but obeyed. I scanned my surroundings to see if there was a place where we could hide or find a public place, but to my dismay there was only an empty backlot with a dumpster for him to potentially dispose of our bodies. I panicked and ran to the bathroom. Once inside, my friend was asking me what was going on. I explained and then told her to put her weight against the door since there was no lock. A few seconds later, someone was trying to open it. I freaked out and pushed against the door so whoever it was couldn't get in. The person wouldn't budge, however, and pushed harder. At one point, the door opened a crack, and I was able to see the man pushing against the door. I freaked out and called my dad while simultaneously keeping my weight against the door. What's funny about all this is my friend was not freaking out and giggled at some points. She even suggested to let go and hide under the stalls, and I was so hocked up with fear and adrenaline that I called her a dumbass in the moment. Even funnier was when I told my dad, "Dad, hello? Someone's trying to kidnap us. Come quick." And he was just like,
"Wait, for real? Are you sure? Alright. You got the door okay? Damn, well, alright, I'm coming."
Long story short, he stopped pushing, but we still waited a few minutes until my dad told me he was there. We heard a knock on the door, and for some reason it felt like it was safe to finally open it. It was a few girls standing there confused. They asked if we were okay since I was crying. I told them, and they got concerned and described the man I saw and asked if it was him. That only confirmed it for me. Truly scary, and I'm glad we got out okay. It was around 6 p.m. on a main road. It was winter time, so it was already dark out. I was walking my dog and was listening to music. I'm a 22-year-old female with a tiny 20-pound dog. As I was walking, I saw a car parked down a small side road, out of the light cast by the street lamps. It was a silver minivan. All I could see was a shadow in the driver's seat. I kept walking, but had my eye on the minivan because it was in a weird spot. The minivan eventually started to creep up, so I picked up my pace. The minivan pulled over next to me, and there was a man in the driver's seat. He asked,
"Hey, can you help me with something?"
and I started to run away. He threw open his door and started to run after me. When he got to the other side of the van, I could see that his pants were around his ankles, and he was trying to run after me. He screams,
"I'm gonna fucking kill you."
I ran up to the nearest house, and he pulled off. I left my dog at the door of the person's house and sprinted after his van. I wrote down the make, model, and license plate in my phone, and immediately called the police. He ended up being caught and arrested 30 minutes later in a parking lot, with his pants still down. They found several weapons and other tools in his car, duct tape, zip ties, etc. It was summer in 2001. I was 11 at the time. I was at my friend's house and she needed to go to her other friend's house for something. I didn't know the girl that lived there, so when her friend came to open the door and asked me if I wanted to go upstairs, I declined and waited in front of the house. A couple of minutes passed, and a guy in a black livery car with tinted windows pulled over. He was dressed in a suit. He looked to be in his late 20s or mid-30s. He rolled his front passenger side window down and asked me if I lived here. I told him, "Not here, but I do live in the neighborhood." He asked if I was able to give him directions to a nearby expressway, so I did. He then said that he couldn't hear me, so I moved closer to him and repeated myself. He told me he was still having trouble hearing me, so I moved in even closer to tell him again. He then asks if I can get in and show him how to get there, and that he'd bring me back. I told him no, I was waiting for my friend and that I couldn't leave. He then started leaning over while still trying to persuade me, and opens the passenger side door. My friend and her friend are coming out of the house at this point, and the guy looks up and speeds off with his door still open. My friend runs over to me questioning who that guy was. I told my parents, but we couldn't do anything because I didn't even get his plates. I wasn't thinking at all. My friend coming out of the house in perfect timing is what I believe saved me. Looking back, I see the red flags, but I can admit, I was pretty naive back then. Since I haven't been doing anything because of this quarantine, I decided to give this a try. This event happened in 2018, and I was 15 at the time. My mum and I usually go to the laundromat every 2 weeks or so, depending on how much dirty clothes we had. We usually go during the weekends because we're exhausted from work and school during the week. It was a Saturday, so that meant laundry day. So we got our clothes together and went to the laundromat. We load the clothes in the washers and left to go run some errands while the clothes were washing. We came back to move the clothes into the dryers. We had some groceries in the car, so my mum decided we could just put the clothes in the dryers, take the groceries home, and come back to wait out the remaining time on the dryers. We did all of that and came back to the laundromat. While we were pulling in, I noticed a large, brownish pickup truck waiting to pull out. I made slight eye contact with the man in the truck, and as we pulled into the parking space, he made a U-turn and parked beside us. He was parked on the driver's side of our car, and I was sitting in the passenger side while my mum was in the driver's side. Me and my mum sat in the car for a while, looking at our phones and talking to each other. I would occasionally look over and notice the man staring directly into the car. He looked Hispanic, and like he was in his mid-30s. I really didn't think anything of it, and would just awkwardly smile back sometimes. A few minutes later, the man got out of his truck and leaned against his passenger side door, which was on the driver's side of our car. I made a joke about it to my mum, saying that he probably wanted to talk to her since she was so pretty. We laughed about it and continued doing whatever on our phones. I couldn't help but feel a little creeped out because he kept staring directly into the car. My mum told me to get out and go check on the clothes, but I was too creeped out to get out of the car by myself. So I told her I'm not getting out because that man was standing right there. She agreed that I should stay in the car and got out. The man moved a bit to give her some space when she got out, and he was parked pretty close to our car. I locked the doors behind her since this was something she always told me to do, and this time it felt necessary to do so. She said hi, and he nodded back. She went in and checked on the clothes. The man ran to the passenger side of the door and tapped on the glass. I pretended not to hear it and just looked at stuff on my phone. It started getting annoying, so I looked up and the man was motioning for me to unlock the door. Now, I wasn't dumb, and I had common sense not to unlock it, so I shook my head no. When I did that, he started banging on the window and repeatedly tugged on the handle to open the door. I got my phone and typed in 911 on the call screen and held it up to the window, hoping that he'd get the message, but he didn't. My mum looked up to check on me and rushed outside and screamed at the man that I was only 15 and whatever he was trying to do, he needed to stop or she was going to call the police. He immediately ran back to his truck and drove off. I went inside the laundromat with my mum, and the lady working there at the time told us that it wasn't the first time that he's done that. She said that he had been coming in there for the past week, trying to talk to any woman or girl because he said he wanted a wife. After that encounter, we never saw him again, and hopefully we never will. I just wanted to share this because I was genuinely creeped out. So this happened about 13 years ago. I was 10 at the time, my brother was 8. We had just moved to a new town that year, and the Walmart here had this sweet arcade up near the service desk. So every time my parents would bring us grocery shopping, they'd give us each a few dollars and let us play in the arcade. The town had an incredibly low crime rate, and the arcade is at the front of the store where dozens of people are checking out, so what could possibly go wrong? My brother is playing the claw machine while I'm standing on the side of the machine trying to help him angle the claw perfectly above a stuffed animal he's trying to get. Suddenly, this random hillbilly walks up to the claw machine next to us, inserts a quarter, and begins moving the claw around. But for most of this time, he's making eye contact with my brother and smiling, not even watching the game. He's not talking to us, just staring and smiling. He has long, thin brown and silver hair, pulled back into a loose ponytail at the base of his skull, a camo trucker hat, and a long, scraggly beard. I remember vividly the way he smelled: stout beer, ashtray, and something that smelled like a sweet yet sour dirt or fungus. He tries making small talk with my brother and I, who were raised to be aware of strangers, but still be polite. Eventually we get bored of the game we're playing, and I usher my brother to follow me to a new game on the opposite side of the arcade. A few seconds later, the man follows us, stationing himself once again at the claw machine next to us. At some point, an overweight lady walks in and says to the hillbilly,
"What are you doing to these little kids?"
and snickers at me. He replies,
"I'm trying to win them some stuffed animals."
She then begins playing the claw on the other side of us, so that my brother and I are sandwiched between these two strange hillbillies. His comment comes across as weird to me because previously I thought he was maybe trying to win something for his kids, but this entire time he'd just been following my brother and I from game to game, trying to win us toys. This has been going on for maybe 20 minutes at this point. They've followed us to several different machines and spent a lot of money. The games were all 25 cents per play. Each time my brother and I switched machines, they'd follow us. The hillbilly says to the lady,
"I'm out of money. You got any?"
She says,
"Nah, I'm broke too."
My brother says, I have $1 still. Now this is the part that really scared me. I remember listening to these two talk about some weird things with us, asking if I have a boyfriend, asking where we go to school, where our parents work, asking if we've ever done drugs, etc. But when my brother said he had $1, she responded with the most terrifying thing I'd heard from them yet. The woman suddenly bursts out,
Well, shit, then give it to him, boy.
Her face was red. The tone in which she shouted was so ear-piercing and gut-wrenching that I could feel the blood drain from my face. My brother looked like he was about to cry. He hands her the $1, and her face lights up. She laughs it off, almost like she's trying to make it seem like she was joking when she yelled at us. My father walks up a couple of minutes later. As I turn to tell him that these people have spent close to $15 to win toys for us, they leave, hurriedly, before he gets a good look at them. My dad is livid. He takes us up to the front desk and tells them what I told him. They make an announcement on the intercom to keep an eye out for these people and to report to an employee if they see them. Then they call the police. I don't actually remember this part or much of anything after my father arrives, but this is what he told me. They never did find the couple. The police reviewed security cameras, too blurry to make out any physical details, and told my parents that the couple left the store immediately after my father showed up, without any groceries. Every time I see a man or woman in Walmart that looks as I remember them, I get anxiety and try to avoid them. So, to the hillbilly couple lurking in Walmart, I hope to never, ever meet you again. Edit. I forgot to mention that the two seemed to be in their mid-50s, from what I remember. I believe they were a couple, but I don't know for sure. I don't think she was his mother, though. It seems a few people thought they were mother and son based on the way I explained it, so I apologize for that. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.